There's been a lot of conversation as to whether or not Kentucky truly has a star on their roster this upcoming season, and I'm here to tell you that Jaxson Robinson will be the stud playmaker that the Wildcats need to have major success in Mark Pope's first season.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Jaxson Robinson and where he falls in this Kentucky Wildcats rotation. Got some interesting comments from the field of 68 talking about Kentucky's overall offseason and about whether or not Jaxson Robinson is that guy. And I've said this a couple of times recently on the show, and I'm going to reiterate it today and kind of break down more specifically kind of what I think about these comments from the field of 68. I think that Jaxson Robinson will be the star that the Wildcats need this year. Also on today's episode, Nate Ament, a five-star forward, has scheduled a visit with the Kentucky Wildcats. Huge prospect that I think fits what Kentucky wants to do perfectly. A lot of upside here for the five-star forward. And then to wrap up the show, we're going to have nightly numbers again, the show within the show that gives you one interesting statistic about Kentucky basketball. And I'm going to use this number to kind of ask you guys a question. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Jaxson Robinson is going to be incredible for Kentucky, and people who don't think so need to simply stop hating. Now, I'm going to discuss some comments today from the Field of 68, which is a YouTube channel, a group of media members discussing all things college basketball. I'm going to discuss their comments, and I'm not necessarily talking about Jeff Goodman and Rob Dowster, who are the two guys that we're going to discuss quotes from today. I'm not necessarily saying that they need to stop hating. I actually understand and appreciate a lot of the points that Goodman and Rob both make. It's just, I really do think we need to start putting in perspective what we're dealing with here when talking about the Kentucky Wildcats and Jaxson Robinson. I said on yesterday's show, breaking down an article discussing whether or not Robinson is the best shooting guard in all of college basketball, I said that I believe that the system and the surroundings that he has put himself in with the Wildcats and Mark Pope is going to make him wildly successful this year, and I think we carry those sentiments into this same episode today. So the Field of 68 recently did an episode. It's like a 28-minute episode. I watched the entirety of it, breaking down what Kentucky has done this offseason, how these two media members, Rob and Jeff Goodman, feel about how Mark Pope, or what Mark Pope has done, and they start talking about some of the specifics as to whether or not they have success, what that looks like, and they give it an overall grade. Goodman gave Kentucky a B+ grade for the offseason. Rob gave Kentucky a B- grade. And I think that B+ or A- is probably where I sit, considering the things that were working against Mark Pope and his now put together staff. It took about a month and a half to get the roster together. It was really weird timing with everything, and yet he was able to not just only go and get the talent that was in the portal, he was able to go and get the best that also fit what Pope wants to do with his system this upcoming season. This is what Goodman had to say about the roster and then about Robinson. You go down the list, and you're like, good player, good player, good player, veteran player, veteran player, veteran. They're all nice pieces. Do you have that dude? They don't really have that dude, let's be honest. Jaxson Robinson isn't that dude. He's a good player who had a really good year at BYU last year, and that's the beauty of bringing him in late. They needed him because he knows Mark Pope's system, and these other guys don't. The thing that Goodman said there, Robinson isn't that dude. He's simply a good player who had a really good year a season ago. While most of this episode breaks down with the field of 68, kind of breaks down their thoughts in a well put together way that I don't completely disagree with. That is the phrase there that I'm starting to take a different stance on. And I know that throughout this offseason, I've continued to say, yeah, Kentucky doesn't really have that star, right? They don't have that guy that stands out above the rest. Well, based on what we've seen, based on what we've heard, and kind of just looking at it again, just kind of revisiting everything, I think Robinson is that dude. You look at what happened during the La Familia scrimmage. He went off against a bunch of former pros. He is going to be offensively what the Wildcats have needed for such a long time. They need somebody that has that shooting spree in them, that has that shot creation in them, that also has a little bit of height. These past couple of years, Kentucky's not been able to find that consistently, and I think in Mark Pope's system, you're going to see dozens of players rotate in and out of this program that look similar to what Robinson does. You can already see some other guys on this roster that already kind of fit that mold. You can see Otega-Owe, Kobe Brea, Ainsley Almanor, different guys that are kind of in that frame, I guess I should say, physically, and then also offensively as well. But Robinson, from a statistic standpoint, he was not bad last year. He was actually pretty good. And I think that with more volume in a system that is going to give him better shooters around him. And we know that BYU had good shooters last year, but on paper, Kentucky is really, really, really good at shooting the basketball. With having guys that can space the floor in a more lethal way in a system that encourages outside shots, Robinson's going to get the bulk of those touches in transition. He's going to do damage. He is Kentucky's guy. He is their star this year, and the Field of 68 kind of talked about it as they went along in their show, as if they didn't really know if that could possibly be the case, and they said that either Owe or Robinson needed to kind of step up and be the star this year. I fully believe the leader in points per game this season will be Jaxson Robinson. He will lead the Wildcats in shots, and he's probably going to be one of the best three-point shooters on this team. I think he is that dude. Rob even said they have a lot of really good pieces. My biggest question is with having a bunch of solid pieces who are solid players and not having a superstar to kind of build it around, is that going to work for him, talking about Mark Pope? I really do think that, yes, this roster is comprised of mainly secondary options, players that were really good as the second best player on their team a season ago, minus maybe Amari Williams. Or maybe they're not necessarily secondary options, but they're 1A or 1B, right? There's always been somebody that's kind of paired with them that you've said, okay, he's really good as well. Deron Holmes at Dayton with Kobe Brea, Efton Reed with Andrew Carr, also at Wake Forest had a really good backcourt last year. Kirk Carissa had a variety of players around West Virginia that were similar to him, at least in terms of numbers and output. Lamont Butler had a couple of really solid wings with him during his time at San Diego State. Keyshawn Johnson 2 years ago that we almost had as a Kentucky Wildcat, at least it feels like it was. But anyway, back to Robinson. I really do think that Jaxson Robinson is going to play into that star role and play it very effectively. Kentucky fans should be excited. They should not sit here and say, Kentucky really doesn't have a leader on this team. They do. They have a couple, in fact. They've got Lamont Butler vocally. You've got Kirk Carissa vocally. You also have a guy like Jaxson Robinson from a scoring, from an offensive perspective. You can look to him as a leader. Amari Williams down low. He is your leader. You've got different guys that kind of gel together really well, and then you've got leaders on this team that are going to bring Kentucky to where they want to be this season. I fully believe it. Again, Goodman made some good points. Rob made some good points. Rob also pointed out that he thinks that Goodman is selling Robinson and Owe a little bit short. I agree. Because at the end of the day, this is my whole argument. If Robinson is less efficient than he was a season ago, like a couple of percentage points, which would be a dip, they're still above average. And slightly above average for BYU shooting last year still made them one of the best offenses in the nation. If they have a marginal or almost unnoticeable drop-off, or they improve, players like Robinson, players like Owe, players like Carr, Brea, Carissa, Butler, it's going to be a borderline unstoppable offense at times. Now, on tomorrow's show, we're going to kind of address what's being fed to us as far as expectations and reports and sights and sounds. And then we're going to try and add some reality to it, because I really do think that there are some aspects of this team that maybe we're overplaying a little bit, but at the same time, there are players like this with Robinson where I don't think we should be selling them short. I think he's going to be very, very good for Kentucky. We'll talk about him more with nightly numbers in a little bit. Before we do that, I do want to talk about Nate Ament, a 5-star who is scheduling a visit to Kentucky. It's going to be the first visit on Amit's schedule here. Before we kind of break down the 5-star prospect, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the place that you need to go if you want to get tickets to MLB games. I've used them a few times this season going to Braves games. I'm sure a lot of you St. Louis Cardinals fans, you've got Reds fans who watch this show. If you guys want to go get MLB tickets to go see your favorite teams play, Game Time is the place to go. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee as well. They take the guesswork out of buying your tickets, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. It is an excellent, excellent app. They give you views from your seat, and they're even better in person. I use them for football. I use them for basketball, baseball, all kinds of events as well, comedy, theater, concerts, all kinds of things. I've got a couple of concerts that I'm going to this fall that I use Game Time to get tickets through. It's really, really awesome stuff. You can take the guesswork out of buying your MLB tickets over at Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Let's talk for a little bit about 5-star Nate Ament, who is going to be visiting Kentucky basketball. In case you have not seen Nate Ament, a 6'8", 6'9", depending on where you look, power forward in the 2025 class out of Warrenton, Virginia, Highland High School. The number 7 overall player, number 4 power forward, and number 1 player in the state of Virginia, according to 24/7 Sports in their raw rating system. The composite rating system has him rated as number 13 nationally, number 5 power forward. And if I'm not mistaken, Nate Ament actually over on On3 is rated as the number 3 prospect in the country. Every single place has him inside the top 10. I'm not quite sure why the composite ratings on 24/7 Sports have him rated outside of the top 10 at that number 13 spot, but nevertheless, here we are. Nate Ament has scheduled a visit with the Kentucky Wildcats this August, actually in 20 days, excuse me. I keep forgetting it's August. Hey, college football is almost back, and I am thrilled to talk about the Kentucky Wildcats when they get their season going. It's going to be super, super fun. But Nate Ament, August 28th, just a couple of days before college football season starts, that is when Nate Ament will be taking his visit. 6'8", 190-pound small forward, received an offer from Kentucky in June, according to On3. He is yet to take any official visits, and he is not expected to make a decision until after the early signing period in November. And I'll break down what On3 and 24/7 Sports have to say about Ament in his game, but just based off of what I have seen, this is a player that has a ton of upside because of how he operates with his size. He's a really solid ball handler at 6'9". He's on the thinner side, a very, very thin frame, but because of that thin frame, he has a little bit more mobility, it looks like. And he's a very confident ball handler and scorer. Now, is he the quickest player on the floor? No, and I don't necessarily think that that's something that's a huge concern right now. Scouting reports talk about his lack of strength and things that he needs to build upon, but I really do think a lot of the negatives when watching this kid will just simply come to disappear over time. At least most of them will. He will build strength in college. He will build more ball handling skills. He will build better defense. I think that as he continues to grow, things are going to change and things are going to improve. But because of his all-around offensive game, you cannot ignore at 6'9" the abilities that this kid has. Sky high potential. Go and watch some of his film on YouTube. We can't show it here because of copyright reasons. He is an excellent scorer in spot-up situations, and the comp that 24/7 Sports has is absolutely perfect. I was going to write this down on my notes before I saw this with 24/7. The NBA comp is Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets. This kid has the same size. He's got a similar shot. He can move through traffic similar to MPJ, and he is a shot taker and a shot maker. He really does like being aggressive in transition, shooting from beyond the arc. He can also post up. He's really good off of ball screens, handling the ball. He can operate in the mid-range. He can hit a ton of turnarounds. He's really good in isolation. He's really good in every single phase of the game offensively. Defensively is where you start to get into some concerns, at least as far as how he carries himself, the pacing of it, the speed, the strength, I think is the biggest problem here. But again, it's nothing that is a huge issue. It's nothing that's like a major concern. As 24/7 Sports notes, this is an unfinished product. There are so many different things that he's going to add here as he continues to grow and as he is able to transition into college. The fact that Kentucky got on this early is excellent. The fact that they were able to get him for the first visit is really good. There are a ton of very high profile programs that I think would love to have him in as well. UConn, Creighton, Duke, Florida State, Tennessee just recently offered him. Texas, North Carolina, NC State, Oregon, Kansas, Notre Dame. Those are just some of his most recent offers. This is a very good player that has a lot of potential at the next level here in the college ranks. You look at what Mark Pope wants to do: run around, shoot threes, have a bunch of versatile, tall, physical wings. I think if you can get him up to speed on the physicality, Nate Ament is definitely a potential lottery pick. He's in contention, I believe, for first overall here in just a year or two. I like this prospect. On3 gives Kentucky right now the best chance to land him, actually, at 43.8%. But I don't know how much stock you can necessarily put into the recruiting prediction machine that On3 has because of the fact that, we haven't really seen a ton of movement here. There's not been a ton of visits or anything like that. So really excited about this prospect. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Nate Ament will have more news as it comes out. We'll let you know what happens during the visit. I'm expecting it to go well, at least hopefully it does. I think there's a lot Kentucky can sell here, at least in terms of minutes a season from now. And then on top of that, you also have offense that you can provide him and different things schematically that I think would really excite this prospect. So there's Nate Ament. Talked about Jaxson Robinson. Let's wrap up the show here with Nightly Numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, Nightly Numbers is the show within the show where we talk about one statistic to do with Kentucky Wildcats, the Kentucky Wildcats, in this case, Kentucky basketball. And this is a number that I want to get your thoughts on here. I want you to tell me over or under in the comments below. The number is 14.2. And that is the number of points that Jaxson Robinson averaged a season ago with the BYU Cougars. Does Jaxson Robinson score more or less than 14.2 points per game this season? You've listened to me talk about how I feel about Robinson. I think it's pretty clear here. I'm taking the over. I think he's going to score more than 14 points per game. I think he's going to get the opportunity to prove that at a very high volume, he can maintain or even improve his efficiency with his new surroundings, and he's going to be that dude. 14.2 points per game while shooting 42.6% from the floor and 35.5% from beyond the arc. He averaged 2.5 rebounds, 1.3 assists, a little less than a steal per game. He is a good offensive player. He was a really important player off the bench for the Cougs. Obviously, won Big 12 Sixth Man of the Year last season. 14.2 points. I think he gets over that. I think he's going to take and make enough threes to make this happen. And I think that guys like Kirk Carissa and Lamont Butler, Andrew Carr, Mari Williams down low, they're going to be feeding this guy in transition. It's going to be a very hard thing to stop because, oh, look, if you leave another player open and you decide to give more attention to Robinson, you've got players that even hit at a significantly higher percentage potentially from beyond the arc, just waiting to catch and shoot. Carissa, Brea, Carr even, Otega-Owe as well. Robinson is in a great position to take an even bigger leap in his final year of college ball, and I think he's going to put himself in position to be a potential high first-round pick. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_. You can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.